Welcome. My name is Stacey. I am the founder of CannaSense Campaign and a proud board member of Freedom Grow. That's what this presentation is all about, is what we're all about. And what we're all about is our plant prisoners, all our nonviolent cannabis prisoners that, while we have a huge industry growing and a lot of cannabis freedom happening daily across the country, we still have many being arrested and thousands in jail and prison for cannabis, and still very many spending ridiculous mandatory minimums and life sentences in prison for pot. Many first-time offenders and many that are in there because of the difference between state law, following state law and federal law. So we work to excuse me. We work to advocate for our prisoners, and also what our mission is bringing light to a dark cell. So how we do that is a lot of our money, probably 99.9% of our money that we raise for Freedom Grow goes right to the commissary of our prisoners. So we have about 200 prisoners that we currently support and send commissary for their books. Anybody that doesn't know, prison is very expensive, and prisoners do not make very much money. They actually make slave wages in prison, cents an hour, dollars a day. And so we empower them with commissary, so they have, and everything costs money. So to talk to their family, to write a letter, not just hygiene needs and food and extra things that they want, but even to call their family members and write letters costs them money. So we bring light to a dark cell by empowering our cannabis prisoners with commissary money. We also have a pen pal program. Many of our members of Freedom Grow have been in prison for cannabis or have had a loved one in prison for cannabis. So we know the importance of sending that light through letters. Letters is something that our prisoners, in communication, now you can communicate on Quora links, via email, and different ways. And that is a lot of the light that comes to their cell, through sending them love, knowing that they're not alone, that there's a whole community that feels that they should be home with us and home with their families and free. The Make-A-Wish program, it's one of my favorite. So, because prison is very expensive, and also the hardships that the families endure when their main financial source in their family goes off to prison, is our Make-A-Wish program. We do a lot of support for the families and the children mostly. And the prisoners are able, instead of just the grief stuff and the hard stuff, they can contact Freedom Grow and ask us to get their daughter flowers that's graduating from high school, or their mom, they're allowed to shop and send us, can you get her this, surprise her with this bathrobe, or, different things. And that's been a really magical program, because it does achieve everything that we do as far as bringing light and keep, it's really hard, it's really sad, but yes, we have to help lift our people up while we work to get them free. It's so important. And the Make-A-Wish program has done just that. The stories are wonderful, that they get surprised. So a lot of these family members don't know that their son in prison is sending them flowers today. And so it's very special. So that's one of my favorite things is our Make-A-Wish program. We do newsletters for the POWs, so we send them information, what's going on outside, and keep them, they're part of our team. So we let them know our events that we go to, and we, ask the public, to write things sometimes and stuff, and, so it all gets included in our newsletter. Letters to the president, that's something that I am very active in my world. We have letters to the president asking him to release all of our nonviolent cannabis prisoners immediately, because that would be keeping his promise too. Like, so we get thousands of those weekly signed. We keep that energy flowing into the White House, that there's people all over this country that are, I mean, some of the things that people say, you know, we do this every day, but, you know, when people like, what? For pot? Life for pot? 60 years for just cannabis? You know, like, it's very surprising for people. And they all, yeah, the majority of people agree with us that all of our cannabis prisoners should be free. Yeah, public advocacy and action, that's like what we're doing here and doing at the booth, and every opportunity that we can to speak up and get letters signed and help more people than just us regular people come, you know, help bring that light to our cannabis prisoners and their families. We also have an annual back to school drive and an annual holiday drive. So back to school drive is, I think this last one we were able to send 100 gift cards to 175 children to help them with their back to school needs. And then our holiday drive, same thing. We were able, I think it was a little bit more, but $100, $200 to all 175 kids. And then Air Wellness helped us surprise one family with like 4 kids. I think it might have been in Pennsylvania. Sorry, I don't remember exactly. It was the East Coast with like $1,000 for Christmas. So we make those things happen. Our annual spring and Easter drive, I think that's some of the ladies' favorite things. It's like really fun to put the Easter baskets together and give gift cards. So it's really important for us that the children, a lot of us are also children of the drug war, so we know how important it is. You know, you have to go to school, you don't really know what kids think. If you tell them, you know, that you have a dad or mom in prison, you know, oh, it's just for pot. Well, you still get the same. You know, it's hard. It's hard in so many ways to be a child with your parents in prison for pot, whether it's just or not, you know, just because the stigma is around prison, you know. And support network, yeah, we're a big support network and more. So like a lot of our families that have loved ones in prison, it's touching that they call Freedom Grow their lifeline and their light, you know. So it's not just about our prisoners, it's definitely about their families. We're there for them. We know what they're going through a lot of the times when, you know, when they need a little help or they need someone to talk to or all that stuff. So that's what we do. Now I'll introduce you to our members, because you learn a lot about why we do what we do just by knowing the beautiful team that we have. This is our founder, Stephanie Landa. She spent time in federal prison in the 80s, and she learned, oh, there you are, friends. So, of course, she had experience and knew how vital it is hearing from the outside when you're in prison. So when she got released, she just started a little grassroots going to events, and she had Landa's Prisoner Outreach Project. She called it LPOP. And back then you could send cards and postcards. So she'd be at the High Times events and all these events, getting letters signed for the prisoners and cards and stuff to make sure that they knew that they weren't forgotten, why everything, all this industry and stuff blows up, you know? So that was her, and then it evolved to Freedom Grow in 2015. So that's where it all started. Me and her met at the beginning of 2012. And at that time I was educating about the drug war and cannabis and all that stuff. she's the one that educated me. I was the same way as the people signing our letters, like, what? You know, there's people spending life in prison for cannabis. So then when I wrapped my mind around all that, I knew that it was like a very important mission to get it all done. So that's Stephanie. She's our wonderful founder and president. This is Randy Lanier. He became our vice president a little over a year ago. When I first started 10 years ago, we had Randy Lanier was on our posters. So he got life without parole. So he got sentenced to spend the rest of his life with no chance of getting out in the 90s. And he's out. He's been out for like 7 years now. And he's now our vice president of Freedom Grow. And this year, he published a book. He gives a big percentage of all his book sales to Freedom Grow, of course. And this is his story, and it's a really good book. So if you're interested, you can look this up and check out his book. It's a really good book. And that's Randy. He is just an amazing human. And in spirit, and definitely with him joining our team, having him, he spent 27 years in prison for cannabis before he was released. He got compassionate release after he had to fight for his way out of prison. His friend that got out before him, Eugene Fisher, was actually part of our team before Randy got out and letting us know that he was going to get Randy out of prison while he was still on our signs. Eugene passed away 2 years after he got out of prison. He spent 30 years in prison for cannabis before he got out. So both of them, they were they're co-defendants. And they both got life without parole, and they both got out of prison before they passed away. I mean, Randy's still alive and kicking with us, and doing amazing things all the time. Kristen Floor, she was going to be here, so she had some family stuff. She was actually going to be speaking with me today, and she is amazing. Soon after I met Stephanie, probably like 3 months later, I met Kristen Floor. This is all like 2012, beginning of 2013. Kristen's story and why this is all passionate with her heart is her dad was a partner in 5 legal dispensaries in Montana. And in 2011, when they were trying to repeal the Medical Marijuana Act in Montana, the DEA raided his 5 dispensaries along with many other ones, and he got sentenced to 5 years in a medical facility, and he never made it to a medical facility. They kept him in general population, and 6 months later, after he went to prison, Kristen, her mom, I raised my daughter in finances and accounting and stuff. So this was also special, touching to my heart, firing. Her mom was the bookkeeper for the company. So they put her mom in prison for 2 years because federal law messing with money and Schedule I narcotics. So her mom was in prison when they called Kristen in to take her dad off life support after 4 months of being in prison. He was beaten severely, shackled to a bed, not given medical treatment, and that's the last time that she saw her dad was severely beaten, broken bones, and when she speaks, you hear that a lot in her voice. It was very traumatic, lifelong trauma to take your dad off life support and notice that he's shackled to a bed still, So that was tragic for her. So her passion, she's made it her life passion to be the voice for all of our prisoners. And she really does a wonderful job, and her heart is amazing. And that's where it all comes from, because, their life was good. Her dad, great dad and grandpa, and then all this stuff happened that changed their whole world. So that is another one of our core board members, Kristen, and one of my beautiful sisters in arms. This is Tracy Glore. She's one of our board members. Her son Lance, we're still working to get him out of prison. He was given 10-year mandatory minimum, again, following state law in Washington, and ended up in federal prison, spending the 10-year mandatory minimum sentence. And he has a very, well, his daughter was like in middle school, now is out of high school and about to start college, all without her dad. And so that's all sad. Tracy helps us. She is very awesome. She helps us with she's our prisoner outreach coordinator. So she helps reach all the prisoners. You know, if we're doing the back to school drives and the Easter drive, she's in with our prisoners getting the information that we need to contact the families if we don't have their contact information yet and all that good stuff. This is Tom. He was Stephanie's co-defendant, so he went to prison for cannabis back in the day. He's a holistic farmer and a cannabis war veteran, and he learned how to grow cannabis here in Hawaii. I recently just learned. I was like, well, I didn't know that. That was like some good trivia to learn about Tom. He's an amazing soul and is in California. He grows like a lot of food and medicine now, and it's just a great spirit. It's great that these guys get out of prison and their hearts stay committed to not giving up with us until all of our guys are out. It's always special to my heart. So yeah, down at the bottom is our board members, but also 3 guys. Randy, I'll just go over here. Randy, our vice president, his son, that was 3 years old when he went to prison for 27 years. So he grew up without his dad, so it was very exciting when he got out. He was in prison for pot. These are our board members. Richard DeLisi spent 30 years. I'll talk about him in a minute. He spent almost 32 years in prison for nonviolent cannabis. And then that's Kristen. Mitzi Wall, she's our newest member, and she became our member. She reached out to Freedom Grow when her life was knocked wildly when her son got cannabis charges and he was facing 10 years to life, and she was in shock. Like, oh yeah, she didn't know her son was with cannabis, and oh no, but what? He's facing 10 years to life in prison. So, and they were holding him. They said he was a flight risk, so he was held 3 years before his trial. So she was really left with not knowing what to do. She reached out to Freedom Grow and became a volunteer right away. She's like volunteering for Freedom Grow as her therapy. And now she runs our Make-A-Wish program. So she helps, while her heart is breaking because her son was just sentenced to, I think he ended up after his trial getting 10 years, and he had already served 3. So he has 7 more years in prison. But now she focuses on the communication with prisoners and helping make their wishes come true. And she always has really fun stories to, tell and share with us. And then there's me. I'm Stacey again, in case you forgot who I am. And so I am, since 2011, I have been writing and educating for the plant. Like I said, in 2012, I met Stephanie and learned that there were people away from their families being, with these ridiculous long cannabis sentences. I was already passionate about cannabis, learning all the truth after going to Oaksterdam in 2011, because 18 years before, my family had to endure the Kentucky State Police and National Drug Task Force killing my uncle, who was a Purple Heart Vietnam veteran, in front of my baby cousin when he was 4, over 12 marijuana plants in 1993. So 18 years later, I go to Oaksterdam after we passed medical marijuana in Arizona, where I reside. And I go off to Oaksterdam University to Cannabis College, and I'm learning everything that my uncle said 18 years before about cannabis, was not only true, but more, and there was all this science and data to back up everything he said when I was a teenager. So that lit a fire in me, and I just started educating about the plant, helping patients get their medical cards, and that was like therapy to me, helping and witnessing the magic of cannabis when you introduce it to patients' lives, and then they start feeling better and getting off pills and all that jazz. Then I met Stephanie and learned all that about cannabis. Prisoners, and then I met Kristen 3 months later. So a few days after I met Stephanie, I went to go pick up that beautiful, mean green freedom machine, the CannaBus. It is a 1988 GMC Thomas-built school bus. It has murals, Cannabis Freedom murals all over it. Our prisoner stories ride in the windows of the bus with us. And I've been in 44 states educating about cannabis and hemp and the need to end the drug war. And I take our prisoners with us everywhere we go, in our windows, petitions, and the things that we do for our prisoners. So that's what I do with Freedom Grow. I ride the CannaBus and educate all over the country about cannabis and our cannabis prisoners and their families. Along my travels, something else I've been able to do that is very special is I've had a lot of the cannabis prisoner families on my bus, and that's always super special. And when our prisoners get out, I've had prisoners that run, this is the last 2 years, it's been a very change of we told you guys it could do it. Because, in the beginning, oh, you guys are so cute, it's appreciated what you girls do. Well, it's because we knew that we had to get them out. We can't get out. They have to get out. It's unjust. Well, then we started getting them out. We knew we could do it, because we didn't give up and we knew it was possible. As long as they were still alive, we could get those cages open, and the sooner the better, because the children are growing up. And also our prisoners are growing older, and you don't get the best health care in prison. You really get awful health care in prison. Those are pictures of my Uncle Gary and my baby cousin, Jake, when he was 4, and that had just happened to my uncle. And then that's him years later on the CannaBus helping educate with us about the plant. I went and got him and took him to Oaksterdam, and so he got to see the memorial they had of my uncle in their museum, and he got to get educated on this beautiful magic plant that his dad died over, And these are our volunteers. We have some amazing volunteers that, we're all volunteers. We don't get salary. We just do this because we know how important it is, and we want everyone else to help us not only bring the light, but help that public pressure so our people get out of prison and our families finally get reunited. I always say that the energy, the heartbreaks that our families are dealing with every day is such hard energy that it's literally love bombs when we release all of our prisoners. And the world needs more love bombs. So we release our prisoners, especially if we did it all at the same time, and all those love bombs and those broken hearts healed. Who knows what could happen to this world, once all that happens. This is all this, Craig Cecil. So this is part of what's cool. Craig Cecil was granted clemency from Trump. He was on the bus windows. Now he's out there with us with prisoner posters and doing all that jazz. Andy Cox, he was on our posters. He had life without parole. Trump gave him clemency because of our letters. In the beginning of 2021, like in the midnight hour of his last day of presidency, granted 15 of our guys freedom. And now he's helping us, with advocating for our prisoners and supporting them until we get them all free. It's really cool. We had no idea why sending light and love to our prisoners, we're creating our own little army, because when they get out, they just empower us so much with their stories and the truth, you know? Like she's another mother, she's Frank's mom. So a lot of our family members help us. I know we got started late, so I'm trying to talk less. Oh. Okay, so I'll do Lance real fast. So this is Lance Floor. Again, Tracy, our board member, we're working really hard to help get him out, along with all of our prisoners. His daughter's growing out without him, and it's really unjust, like especially the people that are in prison for following state law and it conflicting with federal law. And he's one of these guys. He's been really sick in prison while his daughter's been growing up at the same time. So, and Tracy's on our board, you know, so we do a lot of calls to actions to Lance and really praying for his release. Why we have cake today is Luke Scarmazzo. Like, this slide has totally had to change over the last 24 hours, so I'm winging it up here because Luke is someone that we've shed a lot of tears for. He was not part of the clemencies. We thought him and Lance were going to be part of the 15 that Trump left out. We thought, you know, he was going to let out more. And Luke was another one following all state laws in California. DEA raids, during one of those big DEA raids, he was a victim of that. And he got 22 years for cannabis in the most vital years of his daughter's life. So he went to prison when his daughter was like 5 or 6, and after almost 15 years, he got granted compassionate release just yesterday. So everybody clap and cheer and be so excited with me that after almost 15 years in prison, we got to see the pictures late last night on Facebook of Luke being out of prison and with his family. So it's so special. You are a part of a very exciting celebration and change of plans for this presentation, because it's so, a lot of times it's hard to do these things because they're emotional and I cry. But I really believe that Luke getting out of prison has just put me on this high happiness the last 24 hours. So, and we got cake. There's another cake for Thomas Raines. He's another one of our lifers that we just learned less than 2 weeks ago he got to come home. So I made him a cake too, because we didn't have any events going on when he got out to make a cake. So we have 2 cakes over there that you all get to eat. Did you have a question, honey?
Yeah, I have a question. All these long sentences, what states are we in?
All over the country. So we actually have another volunteer position and positions open right now to help us get our state lists more organized, and so we can really start outreaching to more state prisoners because they're really hard to find. So the federal prisoners, I mean, if you check out our booth and see the posters that we have, and these guys are all over the country. They're all over the country. Of course, like Mississippi and Illinois and Indiana and Georgia. Yeah, they have a lot of, it seems like, to answer your question, they seem like they have a plethora of cannabis prisoners still, you know, heavy.
I was under the impression that people were getting out of jail because of cannabis being more legal.
So I will admit that was one of the most heartbreaking days in advocacy, is when Biden did that press release and gave the impression that with his pardon of simple possession, that people would actually be getting out of prison. Because the headlines and everything weren't very clear. We had our prisoners reaching out to us, like, what's going on? Are we getting out? And no one is in prison for simple possession. So just to be clear, All that press release and things, all that, nobody walked out of prison because of Biden yet, to date. Nobody, I mean, well, wait, wrong. Well, yesterday, I forget, Luke Scarmazzo did. He got compassionate release yesterday, so, but none of the executive orders or anything that you see in the media has actually let people walk out of prison. Now, people that might have got a possession charge on the White House lawn in the 80s during a civil rights, thing, they got their records clear. So all their charges removed, they had, over simple possession. Not a lot has been done. That really didn't do it a lot except for publicity, and give people the wrong impression, which was really sad because we had prisoners and family members reaching out to us very confused for 4 days, having to pop people's bubbles. What does this mean for us? Nothing, Yeah, Jonathan, so a lot of people, like you said, a lot of people also get under the impression that we're just working to get our prisoners that were in prison before all this cannabis freedom out. Oh, now they need to get out. And a lot of people don't realize that they're still sending people to prison for life and mandatory minimums, and that's still happening. Like I was talking about Mitzi, how she came to us. Her son, only 27 years old, just got a 10-year mandatory minimum sentence for cannabis. So, and we were at his trial in May when Biden made that announcement. And so it was we knew that, no, we're still going, they're still putting people in prison for pot, regardless of what the media might say. We know that they are. And it needs to stop. Being the light. So I think I already went over some of these things. Being the light, those are some of our little things that we do, or Christmas drive, or yearly Christmas drive for the families. There's Kristen. That's I just think that's a cute picture of Kristen. And she's holding our letter to the president. So that's why I used she can be my letter to the president picture. Corvain Cooper, he was one of our lifers that got out of prison, and when he got out, he started an organization called 40 Tons, and he works with businesses, not just cannabis businesses, but businesses in general, and he does job fairs for people that have nonviolent drug offended records, and he has a whole network. He's getting even a more network. He's only been out for 2 years, and he has this great nonprofit. He's been doing job fairs because he has a network of people that will put our people to work. Because that's one thing. It's not easy to get out of prison and, not even know how to use a cell phone. Many of our guys. And then 2, have felonies on your record and nobody's hiring you. So we work with Corvain Cooper on that project of growing his network of cannabis, companies that will hire our cannabis prisoners when they get out of prison. And then that's just a little thing with our back to school drive. Here's your little craft project for today that you get to do for joining us. Right now, our call to action is sending love to our cannabis prisoners for Valentine's Day. So if you want to send them a little note. It was actually Lance Glor's daughter who designed our little cards for our prisoners. So Denise will grab them and you guys can write a little note to our prisoners and we will send it to them. And they will get that love and light and you will be happy knowing that you helped bring that light into a dark cell, and I appreciate you doing that. I'm not going to do the video. Richard DeLisi, if you're in, I think LPP is having a presentation tomorrow, I believe. LPP reached out to us at the beginning of, or spring of 2020, wanting our help in helping Richard DeLisi get out of prison. He was a state prisoner that was given 3 life consecutive sentences. So he was spending 90 years in prison for cannabis. And we advocated like crazy, lots of calls to action. It has to be different because it's not federal. Lots of calls to action to the governor. These folks want to do a card too, Denise? They want to do a card too. Thank you. So after 32 years of prison and 90-year sentence with no chance of a release, 8 years of constant advocacy and calls to action for Richard. His daughter was only 3 when he went to prison. His son had passed away in 2009. His wife passed away in 2009. So a lot of my heart with working so hard for the DeLisi families was for Ashley. You know, she has struggled so much in her life since her dad went to prison. And finally, in December of 2020, they finally got to be reunited outside the prison bars. And now Richard, they're in Florida. I helped bring, this is their very first picture. This is her brother from Amsterdam. And this is Richard. And she was in a car accident in 2018, and it paralyzed the half side of her body. So I had to bust her out of an assisted living facility and take her down to Florida when we busted Richard out so they could be together. And this is their very first picture of freedom together. Isn't that beautiful? And it's been very, I mean, these guys, especially the DeLisi family, they're like my family. You know, like we're all like family. And it's very special. Richard has been showing up with us. There's a picture in North Carolina, Washington, D.C., California. He's been showing up with us. And he works with both LPP and Freedom Grow to help advocate for our cannabis prisoners. He recently got he got branded by Trulieve in Florida, where a percentage of the Delicioso product goes to him so he can sustain his family after 32 years of prison. He's 72 or 73 and been in prison for 32 years. So I'm very thankful for what Trulieve has done for him in his life, because what was he going to do when he got out, realistically, right? It's all been beautiful. The last 2 years to see all their family reunion go. Craig Cecil, I think I told you about Craig Cecil. He was one of the Trump clemencies in 2021, and another one that his daughter grew up without him, so we were really active with helping him get out of prison. And it's also beautiful, so he rode on our bus windows for years, and he was one of the prisoners that, you know, would encourage me from the bars to not give up, and what I was doing is so important. Well, just last month, my bus is currently needing some mechanical work, and he drove all the way from Illinois to Ohio, and that was like, I was so sentimental and touched that instead of being on our bus windows, Craig Cecil was working under the hood of my bus. He went to prison for life on conspiracy charges because he wouldn't cooperate with the feds. He ran a mechanic shop and worked on trucks that transported loads of cannabis. Well, then when they were like, hey, we know that you know, I don't know nothing, and then they sent him to prison for life, but we busted him out. And now he's helping with the CannaBus that used to ride to advocate for him, so it's really beautiful. Here's some of our cannabis war veterans. George Montriano spent 30 years nonviolent cannabis prisoner. I'm going from left to right. Randy Lanier, again, our vice president, he spent 27 years in prison for cannabis. Andy Cox, he was given life. He spent, I think 12 or 14 years in prison before we got him out. Thomas Landritz was one of our first prisoners that our grassroots advocacy and our letters and our calls actually busted out. So, and he's with Lance Bohr's parents. So it's all beautiful that we're all in a family together. We had a convicts fishing trip to get them all together. We're really, we treat our cannabis veterans like that, you know, they're war veterans here at home. And so we honor them and respect them and love them, like we do all of our war veterans, you know, like in general, they're our veterans too. We need special clubs for them to go to and hang out also. So this is just the loved ones. I just wanted to show you and remind everybody again that years ago, even including a lot of these guys that you see, you know, they loved our support and stuff, but they didn't have a lot of hope that they'd ever get out of prison. And a lot of their, you know, a lot of these guys, their family has already given up or doubtful or don't want to give up. But then over the last few years, we got to show that not giving up and doing things out of your heart, yeah, like I always say, love wins. And we've been proving people wrong for especially the last 3 years as more and more of our guys that were given life with no chance of getting out have been getting out and reunited with their families. Of course, it should have been done by now. They should all be home with their families. I shouldn't have to stand up here and do what I do because we're talking about a safe plant that has never hurt anyone. And its prohibition is just greed and money and, you know, nothing that makes sense. So, yeah, destroying these lives and separating these lives and making kids grow up without their parents over cannabis is ridiculous. And it can't happen soon enough that all of our prisoners, just like these guys, every guy on these posters, and what's really cool, because I almost changed that picture. This is really wild, y'all. In here, all these big pictures are all guys that have already been released out of prison that were given life, right? Well, when I was looking at this, I was like, oh, that little bitty one is Luke Scarmazzo. He's still in prison. So I almost, you know, was anal and changed this slide, and I didn't, and he's free. So now it's official. Everyone on this picture, all these signs, everybody's been out of prison. So that's wonderful. And if you like what we do, you want to volunteer or follow us and keep knowing what all this gets, come in. We're about to have cake. Join us. I'll tell you why we're having cake in a second too. So yeah, so if you want to learn more about Freedom Grow or follow our efforts, here's a few ways to do it. On social media, of course, Freedom Grow on Instagram and Facebook. You can follow me on the bus at the Cannabis Freedom Tour on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram and all that. We also, for those of you that are familiar with Clubhouse, we have a wonderful Clubhouse meeting every Tuesday at 4:20 Pacific time. So any Tuesday that you want to pop in, if you have something you want to share with us, you can be a speaker on the Clubhouse. It's very easy. You just raise your hand and we let you talk. And so that's, yeah, put it in your phone. Did you put it in your phone? You made me so proud. Yeah, every Tuesday, 4:20 on Clubhouse, you can find Freedom Grow. Connected, I included that. It's fairly new and getting out there on big levels. Connected is actually an app like Netflix and Hulu. It's available on your cell phones, Roku, Apple, like all that jazz. And Connected is founded by Carrie Accardi of 420 Media, and she donated us our own channel. And so we have our own channel on Freedom Grow that you can go on the app and you can sit on your living room couch and learn all about Freedom Grow on the Connected app. And also on the Connected app, it's full of education, resources. You can hit a button to whatever state you're in and find all the, like brands and resources and education and local things. It's really cool to have an app. The last almost 11 years, I have been helping educate about this plant, grassroots style, events, on a bus, at events, gas stations, sharing everybody, cannabis information and helping them get connected with the organizations and all that. And now we have an app that's putting it all there for people to sit in their living rooms and get educated, which is really neat. It's kind of like the cannabis event in your living room. So there's that. Join us. We always love more and more volunteers, and it's such beautiful, satisfying heart work to work with these prisoners and their families. Like, you do it because it's so important and needed, but it's also so rewarding and special to be a part of us. And yes, I am bragging. And then I just added the theme of this year's expo is Natural Healing Hawaii. And ironically, I was here last summer for 5 months with my friend Jenny. She actually helped me get the CannaBus before she relocated her life here a little over 10 years ago. And so I was out here for several months this past summer, and it was really divine that this was the theme of this expo, because everything in my heart, I wanted to have a healing farm and healing farms for years. That's one of the big goals, to have a place where people can get healing from the drug war, and a nice, beautiful place. And everything in me, my whole Hawaii experience has been like, well, all of the energy and love and power of the universe is right here, hugging you the whole time you're in Hawaii. So my desire is that my dreams aren't too big and my healing farm is here. Because Hawaii is, that's what I was told in a vision, that one of the powers of Hawaii is that she brings people all over the world to her to inspire and help that heart. That's what we need in this world, is more love and more heart and more connection with nature. And wow, if you don't get it in Hawaii, where else do you, Hawaii leads by example for the whole world in my eyes. So what better place than a healing center than here? And then I will close, and then we'll have cake, and you guys can sign our letter to the president. I thank you guys for being here so much. A lot of, what we do is because the heartbreaks of the drug war. And I will say we like to remind, keep in memory of some of our people. There's been lots and lots of lives lost in the war on cannabis as we've been evolving towards cannabis freedom and everything, out the direction that we're going to now. So yeah, we do this in memory of my Uncle Gary. Again, for those who haven't, my Uncle Gary in the 90s was a Purple Heart Vietnam veteran, and he was killed over 12 marijuana plants in front of my baby cousin. And it was actually the police that held my family hostage for 7 hours, but the news made it sound like it was my uncle, and that's why they had to kill him. And so, rest in peace to my uncle, who even though his passing is tragic, it has inspired a lot of good things and continues. So his truth continues to win against lies. Also Richard Flora, again, that's Kristen Flora's dad, who was following state law and died in federal prison 4 months into his sentence, really beaten and shackled to a bed. Eugene Fisher, he's the one that helped get Randy he was studied in the law library and stuff. He spent 20-some years in prison, was supposed to have life without parole, but he got himself out, and then he worked diligently with us while he worked really hard to get Randy out, and he got Randy out like a year and a half before he passed away. So all that's magic. Leopold, oh, I thought I put his last name in there. He's one of our prisoners that died before he got out. He died in prison. Sage Williams, his dad is out of prison now, but his dad was given a 10-year mandatory minimum and was a single dad. And Sage Williams committed suicide last February because the drug war is hard on the heart, you know. So rest in peace to Sage Williams. William Reddy, he was the one in Michigan that was shot when the police came to take his kid away in a custody situation. The mom said he had marijuana. They came to take the kid away. He was like, I don't have marijuana. And they shot him and they killed him. And they didn't test positive for marijuana, and no, there was no marijuana in the house. So those are the things, you know, even as Cannabis Freedom grows and, you know, more access to patients and stuff, we also have to be mindful there's a lot more work to be done and a lot of things to address, because when we talk about cannabis being medical, where cannabis prohibition is very hard on the health and very devastating to the health system. So, you know, rest in peace to all of our people taken on the senseless war on cannabis, which is a war on us. And thank you for attending and being here. Thank you very much.